Okay, it's 2:00, April the 28th, 2025. I'd like to call to order the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority biweekly meeting. I notice in the room we have Mike Fox, Arthur Babbitts, Grant Paulson. On the video is Catherine Thomas and Jake Edward from Oregon. On the Washington side, we have Jake Anderson on video, Eric Wilson in the room, and I believe that's it.
Ben's online as well.
Sorry?
Ben
Oh, Ben.
is online.
Okay, Ben is online as well, Ben Berger. Okay, modifications, additions to the agenda. Is there any? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as is?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I should probably say on the Oregon side, voting members today will be Mike Fox, Arthur Babbitts, Grant Paulson. On the Washington side, it will be Jake Anderson, Eric Wilson, and Ben Berger. Okay. Looking at the minutes, is there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made from the special session workshop meeting of April 7th or the regular board meeting April 14th? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All opposed? No. So the meeting minutes have been approved. Anyone public comment? 3 minutes per person, 30-minute maximum. We didn't have anybody here in the office sign up. If there's anybody from the public that would like to give a brief statement, please raise your electronic hand. I see none. So let's move it along. Executive reports, co-chairs reports. Jacob, do you have any?
Nothing that's not going to be discussed later.
Okay. Likewise, same with me. So we'll hold for a bit. Project directors update report.
All right, so we continue to coordinate with FHWA and ODOT. We have a meeting coming up with FHWA to prep for the biological opinion discussion. FHWA has asked us to go through them and then coordinate with them. So we're going to meet with Cindy Callahan, who was involved 4 or 5 years ago whenever we were developing the biological opinion and biological assessment. So we're going to brief her, and then we will figure out how to move forward with NIMS and NOAA from there. But FHWA so far has asked us that we go through them and not directly to NOAA or NIMS.
Who actually wrote it?
Correct. So we'll keep you updated on that. If we need to pursue something else, we can. We did an initial review of the draft agreement with Oregon on the lottery bonds. They did do the lottery bond sale. So we've sent some comments over. They're waiting on DOJ to do their portion of that. So we believe that we'll have access to that 20 million by July 1st, if not sooner. We'll work through that. There were a few things in the agreement that we wanted to clarify with them. It sounds like this agreement is not as particular as what some of the other grant agreements. They're a little more flexible in what the language and stuff is, and that they'll pay off of invoice rather than payment. So it sounds like it might be a little easier source to work with on the.
So a question for you on that, maybe you or T. As we get more and more grants, do you have some kind of a matrix that's set up that shows for this grant, here's how you have to pay it, for this grant, here's how you pay it?
Yes, sir.
In case you get, or you hit the lottery instead of getting run over by a truck and you leave, somebody else can pick it up.
Yeah, we have a master database that specifies which invoice got paid by how much, because we have a split. Some of the invoice that has to be split in 80-20, and then some of them can be 100%, but we have a master tracking sheet that
It
identifies.
also has the expenditure dates on it, any ineligible and eligible list of items on it. It's a,
Has,
There's a master cheat sheet somewhere that does.
oh, yeah, yeah.
has the budget team seen that?
Mhm.
Good. Okay.
So can I interrupt for, under the Washington State funding, under funding and finance?
Yes,
It talks about 30 million and 30 million for 25.7 and 27.9.
correct.
Is one of those supposed to be 25 million?
No.
There's an extra 5 million in there, I think.
There's let's hold on that one. There's some good news coming and we'll,
All right.
we don't want to take it away from Brad.
So,
All right.
and I can answer that real quick. The original 75 million was 15, 30 and 30. That's what that 30 and 30 represent.
Okay, so they're part of the 75.
Yeah, the
million, not
20.
Additional.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, any
got it.
additional and stuff Brad will
That
talk
makes more
about
sense
later,
then.
but
Okay.
yeah, so. Okay. We did have a meeting this week with, and this is covered a couple different ways in here, but I'll just go ahead and brief a little bit, then others can jump in. We did have a meeting with FHWA and Umatilla. FHWA headquarters had some additional comments on the MOA that we had with Umatilla. The Umatilla, it's going to require Umatilla to go back and have some additional conversations about the agreement. So we are not as close as we had once thought we were with that agreement until they have an opportunity. So FHWA is working on drafting up those comments so that they can be provided to Umatilla in writing. And then we'll have to see back where we are once they get those comments. But those comments will impact if they stay. And based on the meeting, those will impact when we will get signature from Umatilla. But we are definitely not as close as we were prior to that meeting. So I don't know if others want to add anything.
Yeah, so the comment from Federal Highways is due this week, if I remember right.
They are.
And I would strongly suggest that when we talk to FHWA before the next meeting with Umatilla, which is next week,
It's Tuesday.
they ought to consider going there in person.
Yeah.
Instead of doing this over video. I think there's a little rebuilding of relationships that need to take place, and it's hard to do over a video. Catherine, do you have any other comments? You were sitting through all of that.
No, nothing to add. I would just emphasize that in person would be great to repair if we need to repair.
All right. We also met with the Oregon Division right away, Chris Woods. We did get approval from him to move forward with the 6F appraisals and mitigation properties. We have to first meet with the National Park Service in order to get concurrence from them on the 6F boundary. And then once we do, we will start to move forward with getting the appraisals on the 6F properties that we are impacting as part of the project, as well as the non-6F. While their appraisers are out there, we said, go ahead and get as much as we could, not send them out multiple times. So we're working through that as well to get those appraisals. Once we have those appraisals as part of the 6F process, the mitigation for that is a dollar to dollar. So once we have the value of that property, then we will know how much we have to mitigate. There's been a number of potential properties that have been identified. We'll have to go through an approval process to make sure those properties are adequate mitigation properties. I think the county has one or two, Port has a couple. So we'll see where they stack up dollar to dollar and see what our total mitigation is going to end up being.
The purchase price of the property or purchase price and improvements that need.
It's
to be made
appraisal
to get
price,
used.
it's appraisal price to appraisal price, yeah, of the land. And they follow what's called a yellow book appraisal, and that is as much detail as I know about the yellow book appraisal.
All right.
I think it is just a standard. If this was a vacant piece of property in its location where it's at, no restrictions, what would the appraisal of that property be? That's what I understand it to be.
Okay.
So, once they get the appraisals, that'll be reviewed by the committees and then by the board. You guys will have to take some actions on the appraisals and then the mitigation properties as well. You won't have to own the mitigation properties. The other owners will have to agree, so there's some work there to do, but, and those new mitigation properties would have those 6F restrictions on them as well, so.
I'll tell you, the challenge that I'm gonna have with this, and Mike knows all about it, that when they get the appraisal for the port property where the port office is, and we're gonna come in over the top of it, since it's 6F, how can you appraise anything more than basically zero? Because you can't do anything with the land. It has to be a park and rec,
Well, that's something though. It's on zero.
but it's not gonna come back as zero.
Right.
So
They don't take any of that into account. I've said that. And
I
there's a
understand.
disagreement, but they don't take any of that into account. I don't agree with it either, but that's how they do the process. So, I don't know if it's a concern, but the price that comes back, we're all waiting to see what that ends up being because.
If it's $1, I'll keep my mouth shut.
So we are also, the PDB team is getting ready to start work on the bathymetric survey. I did get an email today from Commissioner Edwards. I'm going to set up a meeting with him and Kiewit because he has experience with bathymetric surveys. So he had some questions. So I'm going to set up a meeting with him to go through what they're planning to do and maybe some options that he has that might be more
Good.
cost effective. So we'll let you know how that
Now,
goes.
Kiewit is defining the locations, correct?
They have defined the areas and the locations of where they need to do the bathymetric survey, yes. And it's to supplement previous work that was done. We've completed some field work this week that'll go into some reports that need to be done. And then we're starting the conversations around bridge monitoring. There's another meeting tomorrow about how we want to monitor the existing bridge, both for two things. One is how construction might impact it. And the second thing is the health of the existing bridge. Sounds simple, but it's a little more difficult when you start talking about when and how you determine if something's actually a problem. That's going to be the challenge of how to determine that. So right now we just want to do the data collection. We want to understand what the old bridge is doing, establish some baseline, and then there will have to be some discussion about how to interpret that and how to interpret changes to that and whether that's an issue.
Maybe a slight modification to that as far as responsibility. The way I see it, the authority is responsible for instrumentation on the bridge to determine whether our construction activities are hurting the bridge, either as we do it or as we do test piles and so on. That's one thing. The other thing is, while we're out there putting the system in place, if it makes economical sense, maybe the port wants to add sensors to that package that they and their engineers would use to help predict the health of the bridge. So it's kind of a two responsibilities using data that we put out on the.
Can you just give an example of what that might look like, what the port might add to that?
Sure. Simplistically, strain gauges of some type in some locations that show the deflection of key members as trucks roll across the bridge. And those kinds of things to look at how is the bridge degrading over time.
I think part of the discussion was that we've got our end date is not as finite as it once was. So does the port need to keep that bridge going for 5 years, 6 years, or 8 years? And while we're out there, can we do something to facilitate that process?
Okay. We're continuing our negotiations with Kiewit. We have negotiations meeting with them on Wednesday that should get us to a final dollar figure. We are still waiting on some contract language to determine the deliverables, and there's a clear understanding of the deliverables. So we'll know more at the next meeting where we are with that negotiations.
So it sounds like to me the two numbers are diverging.
Yes,
They're coming together
converging. Yes.
Nicely.
Yeah.
Some of the reason for the divergence is that because we don't know full funding, some of the work that Kiewit wanted to do in 1B, which is associated with early works packages, we're going to shove out into 2.
Yes.
Because we don't know if it's going to be design's done, we immediately go into construction. Probably not.
Right.
So if it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, there's time to go ahead and release that early work construction and not itself impact the schedule. But it protects cash flow.
Yep. And on the funding side, we have not heard anything. There was one rumor that the BIP is getting reworked and might come out at the end of June. It probably will be under some new name, but there's no real clear answer on that. And infra, the excitement we heard a few weeks ago that sounded like things are moving, there's not that excitement anymore, and that there's really a question of when and how quickly that'll move.
So on the BIP rewrite, if you will, or new program, I think we as an organization need to take a deep breath and check whether we want to go forward with 532 or some other number. Because as you know, right now, by moving to 27, we've got an exposure of additional escalation of 2 years.
Yeah. So along that, you're going to get a presentation on the 12th related to your TIFIA and what the impacts have been with the decrease in traffic, increase in interest, and the advancing of some of the use of those funds and how that's impacted your TIFIA, as well as the delay, I think is something that we need to take into account. And then on the federal side, where you are with your maximum contribution from the feds. So I think there's a number of things that are going to evolve over time here that we're going to have to keep an eye on, and we'll keep you updated on those things as they evolve over time.
So it sounds like there's no doubt that there'll be some reconsideration of the number, but the question is how much reconsideration.
Exactly.
It's kind of going to, I mean, every year there'll be an impact to the cost. Right. So every year we have to push out, there'll be some level of impact to the project that we'll have to summarize.
And when you were talking about the TIFIA, did you say increase in traffic or decrease in traffic?
Decrease. I meant to say decrease.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I expected. I thought I heard the word increase.
Increase in interest rates.
Oh, okay.
So the other negative.
Okay.
So yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
So okay, that's everything.
Okay, great. So let's get a report from Brad. Good news coming out of Washington State.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. So the state legislature ended last night about 6 p.m. with the final passage of their transportation budget that did have, as we've been talking about, did include a modest transportation revenue package, but it did allow the several projects to continue to fill kind of budget holes that they were facing. And in the course of that, we were able to secure the additional 50 million for a total of 125 from Washington that we have been working towards. It's going to be 10 million additional in the 25, 27, and then 40 million additional in the 27, 29. There is, we continue to have some language that links us to Oregon. What I'm still trying to suss out is whether that is still there for 25, 27 or just in 27, 29. But again, overall, in terms of hopefully both cash flow and the Washington portion, we are at where we want to be. And then, we certainly can use it is on paper and visible, and we can use that to demonstrate matching to the feds in Oregon for sure. So it was a really, really good team effort. I want to thank the HNTB team, especially Debbie and Jennifer, Mike, those folks. All of it was invaluable in securing that. We also need to make sure that when we see them, we thank all of the legislative delegations from both the 14th and the 17th. All of them had a huge role in getting us to this point. I also want to make sure this project is, as I mentioned before, there were a lot of projects. This significant kind of revenue package really didn't build anything new. All it did was kind of fill some holes. We were one of the very few spots that got any additive funding as far as over and above what kind of has already been sort of budgeted. Again, it's positive, but it does sort of call us out, and we need to be both gracious as well as continue to monitor it as we move forward, because I'm not going to say it's necessarily a target, but there were a lot of other projects that either got reduced or did not see any kind of measurable increases. So, but when all said and done, it was a great effort, and we did secure the 125 that we've been shooting for.
That's absolutely outstanding news, and we could sure use some right now. And thanks for all of the effort that I know you and your team have put together, along with the authority and so on. Question for Dan. How do we get this information now over to our friends in Oregon to let them know that Washington now has stepped up? They closed out the 125. We know Oregon's trying to push for it, but can we use this as a little bit more of a leverage to, hey, we're almost there?
Yeah. I spoke with Dan Bates from Thorn Run this morning and let him know the news from Washington. So he and Maddie are working the halls in the Capitol today, letting folks know. And then over on the public affairs side of the project, Noah, Roy, and I are working on a public rollout plan to get information out through our channels. We'll be in touch with the press later on this week and get some content up on social media. So we'll make sure it's front and center and what the public is putting out there.
Should we be calling Jeff Helfrich and others personally from the authority?
Let me talk to Dan about that and just see what's helpful at this point. We've still got about 2 months left in the Oregon process. So we're kind of rolling into a little bit of an Oregon update here, but our standalone funding bill did pass the Joint Committee on Transportation last week. So
that's another set of good news.
That's great news. Yep. And so that advances to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. And, we'll be continuing on through that process for the next 6 or 8 weeks as we get close to the end of session. Concurrently, the Oregon Transportation Package effort is still happening. There's no real news on that front. So it's good that we're kind of working our 2 parallel tracks here. And certainly the good news out of Washington is a big boost to our chances.
And but also you see the model that you really don't know until the very last minute.
Exactly.
Right.
That's right. We got news 24 hours before the Washington legislature adjourned. That were in the conference bill. So.
Yeah, I was sitting up reading the press coverage, and all they were talking about was the Tesla tax. And I couldn't read into that what that had to do with us. So this is the first.
It didn't. That had nothing to do with us, and we don't want to go near that.
I knew we didn't want to go near it. I was just trying to find something about transportation. That's all I could find.
Yeah, no, this is the first time in my career where a a pretty significant transportation package has sort of largely been below radar and just stayed kind of percolated along and then passed with, frankly, little fanfare. It usually they're pretty big deals, but conversely, just so folks know, I mean, there was a very, very significant general fund tax package to the tune of $9 billion that has a lot of folks upset. Just to put things in perspective, you are kind of the only client that I am delivering good news to right now. So let's enjoy it right now because most others are not getting that right now.
So let's move on. I don't see Dan up there.
Jake came on. I don't know if he had something to say.
Jake, do you have something that you want to say?
I just wanted to say thank you to Brad. That really is an amazing job to be able to close it out. If this was only a $500 million project, I'd be feeling really good right now.
I understand.
Wait, it's not?
I don't see Dan online.
It'll be
Oh.
next meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, anything else from government relations you want to?
No, Mike covered the federal non-news, so I think we're ship shape.
After federal non-news being,
Different, there's no news coming out of it.
but I think I missed you covering it. What the,
Oh, the infra and the VIP.
right,
Just the
Okay.
infra's not going, hasn't changed and
Right.
VIP is or either. So nothing's
so
been,
they're going in different ways,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because you were told before the infra, that there were some,
So, yeah.
infra related contracts
So the-
moving forward.
The positive of infra has died down and there's not as much conversation around it being moved out. It's kind of went back to nobody knows. So I'm not as optimistic that that's coming anytime soon.
I thought that you had said that, that some of.
They
the
did.
participants
They
had moved
did,
forward.
and it was a very short wave and it kind of has gone away and there has not been follow-up for anything else.
Okay,
So,
missed that, thanks.
yeah, it kind of went back to silent and unknown again.
There's some articles in the paper today about, red and blue states and sanctuary and all kinds of stuff about that. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of that's getting in the way.
Yeah.
Okay, how about our partner updates? Federal Highways, ODOT, WashDOT. Anyone have anything to contribute?
If Mike
Saying-
can. I was just
Go ahead,
gonna
Roy.
just let Mike know real quick about the PCR
Yes.
for the 20 million. Apparently, it's gonna be easier to change the PE phase by increasing 20 million. So that's what we're gonna do as far as I know. No
That's fine.
further on your end, so.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Can you translate that?
Oh, sorry. The 20 million that we are getting through the lottery bonds needs to get updated in the STIP.
Okay,
So PCR is project change
Request.
request. I couldn't remember what the R was, sorry. So we worked with Rob last week to put that together in the best format that made it easiest to do that update. And it sounds like adding it to the PE phase is the most efficient way to get that done. So
PE being,
preliminary engineering, sorry. Yes.
good work. Thanks.
We love our acronyms.
Yeah.
No, we just like to get them, people will listen to the tape, want to know what we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, moving on, consent agenda, invoice approvals. I believe the Funding and Finance Committee has looked at them and you're okay with it? Yep. Engineering Construction Committee has looked at it and we're okay with them as well. So can I have a motion to approve the invoices or?
I move that we approve invoices as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion on it? Saying no, could I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, motion carries. Let's get into the committee reports. Engineering and construction. Catherine, you're up.
Thank you, sir. We had our meeting on the 23rd of April and we discussed the 6F mitigation that we discussed here on the executive report earlier. We talked about the right-of-way process and we had a brief on that, pretty extensive process talking about all the different property owners. We talked about value and relocation. We approved the invoices that we just went through. And then we talked about the different utilities and the location of those utilities on the bridge. We updated the entire committee to the tribal negotiations because we had a lot to update them on. And then we talked about the 1B negotiations. And that is all I have, but I also want to say thank you to the team because I didn't know we got money and because I haven't read my news yet. So I had a great Monday. Happy Monday, everybody.
And the only thing I would add to that, Catherine, is when we were talking about the utilities on the bridge, we did talk about a catwalk underneath the bridge, adjacent to the utilities for future access and maintenance. And Hewitt and HNTB are going to bring back to our committee some options. We're kind of looking at either going external to the bridge, probably on the west side. The downside to that, it's kind of exposed, people will see it. Another option could be between the girders on the west side, which is below the pedestrian bicycle path, which if you had to get down there, you wouldn't have to take one of the roads out of service to get access. So we're kind of homing in on those two areas. So stay tuned. But I believe we do need a catwalk if it's going to be under the bridge. Otherwise, it'd be incredibly expensive to maintain over the life of the bridge.
You've looked at the visual subordination questions.
Yeah, and that's why, even though we're still considering putting it on the exposed side of the bridge, it would have to be for a huge savings in my mind versus putting it between the first and the second girder, which is hidden
Right.
up underneath.
Back up underneath it somewhere.
Yeah. So no decision or recommendation yet for the authority, but it's coming. We'd like to get that done before we start into 1B in design. Arthur, governance administration.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was trying to remember details. I don't remember any details, and then I remember that we canceled.
Oh, okay. Okay. And no communications this week. Unfinished business, not applicable. New business, Mike.
We talked about a second workshop for the committees. Amy, do you want to pull it up? We sent out an email for voting. There was a number of different options that were there. It looks like, again, the 5th and the 12th, which is Mondays, were the most, where most folks were available. So I wanted to get, if you didn't get a chance to respond and get input, or if we could get a decision as to whether you wanted to do the 5th, which is now next Monday, or the 12th.
When I look at this, not many people responded.
Yeah.
Almost, I would have to ask the question, is this really important?
So I'm a little confused. I responded, right?
Yeah, you did. Yes.
Oh. Because I
Yeah,
know
you're
I'm
on
not
there.
available on the 5th.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I see here,
Says your response says you were.
Well, so a meeting, a meeting has come up since then.
Okay.
Because it's like 2 weeks ago that we.
It was. We took a really long, and
Yeah,
we
unfortunately.
just weren't getting really quick
Yeah.
responses. That's
Yeah,
what we brought
with
up.
county business. So they scheduled a joint planning
Yeah.
commission meeting on the 5th.
Okay, so
now.
we're down to the 12th then, or not having it.
this begs a question to me. I think more and more of our members are getting tied up in normal work activities that they have during the day. Thus, the question over on the far right-hand side with evening options. Again, I don't see a lot of people really responding to this, so I kind of question, is it really that important, number one? But the other thing that kind of begs a question, and maybe attendance today is a little bit similar. Do we need to move this meeting to an evening meeting to get more people to be able to attend?
We have tried evening, and just for reference, we have tried evening meetings. And every time we've tried, we have never been able to find a weekday where you all don't have something else already.
Right.
Because you're in a lot of other things and they all in the evenings. We've never been successful at finding an evening time.
Yeah, we've talked about this
Right.
three-ish times before.
To me, I think the problem, so two things. Number one, it looks like I already got in the problem I had on the 5th, which is
Yep.
I have a 5:30 meeting, so I just have to be out of there in time to get to a 5:30 meeting. So so withdraw my comment about the 5th.
Yep.
But secondly, yeah, in other words, I responded correctly there, but we don't, we just need to schedule things for their events, I think, so people can plan around it. Trying to squeeze something in when people's schedules are all full, we have a lot of things that are being scheduled out, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks.
I mean, I'll throw out, there's this question, kind of a nebulous question about the committees and are they working? Are they not working? Should they be reset? I think there's a desire to talk about it, but we haven't really identified a problem or a critical need or something like that. So maybe starting with an hour to figure out if we really need to dig into this and if we have some, I mean, I think it boils down to, do different of us have a different feeling or perspective on what the issue is or what we're trying to fix?
So you suggesting maybe add an hour to the meeting on the 12th?
Yeah, before we try to invest 3 hours in fixing something that we're not sure what the problem is, let's see if we can spend an hour and identify the problem that we're trying to address. And then maybe that'll either tell us whether we need to invest 3 hours or not, I think.
I like
Maybe it's
that
a half
idea
hour.
myself. Let's make sure we've defined what the problem is that we got to go fix.
To go to what Arthur was saying, do you want us to push out a month and look in June to see if there's a better date and time?
Or maybe what we do is we either extend this meeting, the next meeting by 1 hour to define the problem. Once we've defined the problem and we've said, yes, it is a problem, let's go forward. And then you schedule something out a month or 2 months and get it on the calendar far enough out that people can do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I would
weeks
recommend.
is kind of the magic window, I think.
Was that?
3 to 4 weeks out is the magic window, I find. 2 weeks, it's already booked, and
I think we
once you get
started a
with a
month.
month
We
out.
started a month early on this one and got no responses, so.
Yeah.
It
And
took
I
a while to get
shouldn't
responses.
talk because I was remiss. I didn't.
Okay, is you open the window and close the window. Just leaving the window open for any period of time, I can't keep a slot on my calendar.
Well, I know, and that's where I didn't want to close it with only less than half of you responding, so it's like, well, let's talk about it at the meeting.
Why don't we just have the meeting on the 12th? Let's get it over with. If it only lasts an hour, that's great. If it lasts 3 hours, that's fine. And then we'll see what comes out of it. I think the last one was really good to help us get on the same page. We've got good news coming out of Washington. I think we knew we split these up for a reason, and let's just do it.
I'm sorry, did you say do 1 or 3, 1 hour or so did you just say do an hour on the 12th and then see if we need a further meeting, or did you say
I
go as long as it needs to?
Set it for 3 hours on the 12th. Hopefully it'll only take an hour.
Is 9:30 to 12:30. That's our off meeting week, right?
No, 12th is a meeting.
12th is a meeting day.
So we'd be meeting twice.
You'd be here
First
all
at
day.
9 and then back at 2.
Back here at
Yeah.
I'm not thrilled about doing that.
unless we tack it on
Right up to
before or
the
after.
winter side.
So another option would be the 12th, but add it to the back end of this meeting.
Or 4 o'clock,
Yeah,
which is,
And,
I'm fine with that.
and then hopefully it doesn't take us 3 hours.
Well, I like Eric's idea of adding an hour to the meeting on the 12th, and then if we need a further meeting, scheduling a further meeting, because I'm not going to be comfortable staying for hours.
Jake, you have your hand up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that, I mean, what I was hoping to get out of this wasn't necessarily to define or fix a problem. I think it's good that we as a group talk about our organization and how we're doing our business, and maybe have these sort of general discussions, ideally, maybe not in front of the public. And so I was excited to have this discussion. I don't think there's necessarily a problem, but I also think that we need to set aside a little bit of time every now and then and just sort of reassess what's working, what's not working.
So just for the record, we have to be public.
Yes.
Okay, fine, let's do it in the public.
So Jake, my interpretation of what you said in this meeting is we could start out where each of the teams, the committees, kind of explain how they operate, what are the things they're looking at, how involved are they? And then have a general discussion afterwards. Does people feel comfortable with the way it is, or what changes would the entire team like to see in the way we operate?
Yeah, exactly.
So, to me, we ought to be able to get at least through that first part of it in an hour. 15 minutes for each team to explain how they're operating. Seems to me.
I don't think
way
that's really a
sufficient.
subject. I didn't hear that as a question. So I think I like the way Eric posed it more.
Yeah.
To try to identify what is it that we're concerned about, what is it that various people on the board would like to see change, get that all out on the table and figure out how much discussion that needs.
So you back it up to a more elevated discussion first that says, what's the perception of the team, how things are working, and then that perception is a reality, and then have a discussion of what do you want to change?
I think that's fair.
I think the whole way this came up is when we were talking about the different committees are getting siloed, and information is, because we only meet every whatever it is, first and third, that you end up 2 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks goes by before something kind of gets to the point where you know enough to actually talk about it. And so how do you break down that silo? How do we get information between the different committees on a more immediate basis? I think is the basic problem statement. And you had done an outline that didn't really support that problem statement. And that was part of why I was grinding gears. So,
And I had gotten feedback from other commissioners on what they wanted to talk about. So that's why it was a lot more than just that.
There's also the belief that decisions are being made in committees as opposed to by the board.
yeah, that may be. So it seems like all of that is a really valid discussion to figure out, is our structure working? How do we modify it so that it addresses those issues, or do we need to just throw the whole thing out and reset it? Or, I mean, I think that's kind of what the issue came up because someone's not happy. So how do we get everybody happy again?
Addressing what's going on, if it's perception or what the deal is.
You also have at least 2 new members coming on.
Yeah.
You'll need to decide how you're going to assign them or get them involved in a committee.
So do we have consensus that at our next standard meeting, we will add an hour to go through this kind of top level thing. And then we decide off of that whether we need a more detailed meeting.
Yes.
And we're gonna use this meeting invite, this meeting time, like Zoom and everything to do it. Not a separate, we're not gonna like sign off and join a different meeting.
Yeah, why would we?
I'm hoping we don't. I wouldn't
Yeah,
like
no,
just,
it's
is
just
it okay just to
confirming.
Yeah, I just want to know it's okay to extend
I
it
think that makes
by an
sense.
hour.
We're not hiding anything. Let's,
No, yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Public
I'd
meeting.
rather just extend this an hour than to create a whole new.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's just a discussion topic. I mean,
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
doing pretty good on time right now.
right,
Today, maybe we can squeeze it in and then decide if there is or isn't.
reason for more.
it's okay to be ahead of schedule.
We could just add it to the agenda if we wish.
Yeah, we'll do that. That's what we'll do is add it.
Okay, that's the workshop.
Oh,
Anything on the informational items that we would like to bring out?
No, I mean, there's some updates on the budget committee, just changing the date, but that's moving forward. They're working on picking out some folks. Tiffy, we talked about, that'll be at your meeting on May the 12th. And then I've talked about the record of decision, which is the meeting with HRWSBA and Bella and this.
I think we talked about a little earlier on the record of decision, where's,
We don't have any FHWA folks on.
no, I'm talking about our folks. I can't see her.
Which one? Christy?
Christy,
She was on, but she's not on now.
okay, because we have had progress in the last couple of weeks that
Yes. So we did. I can give you a break.
Whole thing on here, but
Yeah.
I didn't really talk about it.
pretty
No,
significant.
did I skip it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We talked about the success. You got sidetracked.
I'm sorry. I got
No, no.
Yeah. So I guess, couple big things. We did get our reevaluation signed by FHWA, so that is finished. That is one of the steps to getting your ROD and your FEIS. We also got the 4F determination signed, so that is now complete. That was another step. We submitted some documents back and forth last week with FHWA on the FEIS and the ROD. That is going to be heading. Do you want me to? I don't remember what FEI. Final environmental impact statement and record of decision. And we are working through.
Just like a little bit of a look.
We are also then working through going out to the consulting parties to get their review. So that's moving forward. So a lot of progress made towards obtaining the final environmental impact statement and the record of decision. So it's looking like a July timeframe to get that all done.
Previously signed was the biological
Opinion, yes.
PO. So there's not that much left
Yes.
before we can get signatures.
Think in
on
July.
Record of decision.
Yeah, it's looking like July, and then there's some review periods that happen that take a long time, but
That would be a huge milestone for this project.
so definite steps forward, definite progress being made on that side.
The record of decision it's recorded in the Federal Register.
It is, and then it sits there and there's a period of time where people can go and comment or file lawsuits or whatever they want to do and posing it if they choose to. But yeah.
Okay, anything you want to mention on the upcoming action items?
I don't have anything on that. We've talked about most of it.
You know, I would like for us to consider putting a little bit more pressure on that analysis of the executive director. Because I just see.
That doesn't have to be in place until phase 2 and you go to construction.
I understand.
Just so people are aware of it, we did provide some information and Grant's working on that. And I think that, I guess what type of information do you need for that decision? Or what are you looking for?
It got pushed a little bit because we put together the other thing that was asked for, but yeah, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, what the impacts are on it. So,
I think what you need, other than the financial piece of it, is what we would have this person do.
Yeah.
And as some of us step away, whether we like it or not, some of us have been kind of pushing the boundary of an executive director.
Yeah.
There's going to be a void, and I'm talking about Jake and myself. Jake's now got a full-time job that he's got to pay attention to, and I'm going to be leaving. And if the authority says we don't need it, fine. But I think you do.
I think that the analysis that Grant does is going to either show that it's going to save us money or it's not.
Mhm.
And I kind of think that that's what I'm looking to see.
And that's why I think we need to bring that forward a little bit. Don't let it slide out. Bring it forward and then make the decision and go.
and
Grant, pedal faster.
saving money on things. Well, I think, and Grant saw this in the write-up, I think saving money on people volunteering their time is not really saving money. So I think, a lot of the roles and things that the executive director is going to do, you were getting for free. So I just want to make sure perception isn't there's a big savings coming with this position, because it's actually taking on a lot of responsibility you weren't paying for.
And I think what happens is if you don't have Jake or Mike there all the time, it falls to Mike.
And you're gonna need somebody, I think,
And
long
he's
term.
probably full.
Yeah. And you're gonna need somebody long term to represent the agency.
Right.
Locally, nationally, and at a state level to do things that consultants cannot do for you and speak for the agency.
Right, which is where I thought the grants analysis was going to look at. Is it going to be cheaper to have this done through HNTB or by hiring an executive director?
And I don't think there's a big cost savings coming off of the HNTB contract to do that work. That's what I'm trying to say too.
That's going to be part of what we're going to present to everyone.
Yeah.
So I need a little bit more time to get that done. Do we have time to get it done by the 12th? I don't know if we have time to get it done by the 12th.
It'd be better to take 2 weeks and have it well thought through than.
I know.
I think it never comes off well when there are questions without immediate answers.
A lot of what was identified was things that are be covered better than they're being covered now. And are getting pushed to the side because there's not time to do it. And things that were being covered by authority members donating time to do it.
Well, we can lay it all out.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, anything else?
I'll try to bring it back to you. Well, not try. Bring it back to you as soon as I can bring it back to you.
That's fine.
If you can.
Okay, let's go around the room. Any additional items anybody wants to bring up?
I just had a question. We set a budget committee meeting. It's on the 19th.
Yeah.
Okay, in between our two meetings?
Yes.
Okay. Just, okay.
Would you rather do it on move it a week farther out? And
We've already worked on this, but we had
Yeah.
budget committee members where it worked better.
Yeah,
for them.
that's fine. So I was just voicing that so everybody knew which
Yes.
Monday it was. Everybody knows which Monday it is.
And it can be virtual,
Yeah.
so anyway,
So have you sent out invites?
yes.
So, yeah, we have a budget committee meeting in between our normal meetings.
Okay, and Debbie's very much part of that.
Yes.
Good. Anything else from anybody?
I just saw Mike Shannon forwarded on a letter from Secretary Duffy. Fairly involved 4-page letter. we've all read it. Is there anything to discuss about it?
I would have Stan to translate.
I'm not prepared
That
to
bounce back quickly.
give you a faithful translation. Is this the memo that we
Yeah, I
discussed?
don't think there was anything new in the memo. It just referenced the existing law and connected the dots of the executive orders, I think, back to existing documents.
I think where the tie is the news articles that are coming out today about sanctuary cities and states and the threat of holding up federal monies and grants. I think that's where it kind of ties through this letter.
Yeah, I think it
We
was,
don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
it was definitely a strong statement to groups that may not be complying with some of the executive orders or have came out against them. It sounded like a very strong statement of where they are going. So I think for us, it's not that big of an impact. We're kind of independent of that, and we don't have any policies that
That's kind
are
of
in question. So
was kind of my thought, but
Or to argue any of these policy questions.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with our charter,
right.
and we have no authority to do anything in this area.
Yeah. So you guys are kind of independent of it. So
and we're kind of interpreting these, there's been a couple of these memos that have come out in the last few months, just as, kind of like indicators of how the DOT is thinking. And we might see that, we'll probably see that reflected in the notice of funding opportunities that come out, moving forward. So this gives us a little maybe head start on how we're thinking about and how we're going to be talking about the project.
But every grant that we get, we're given language by the DOT that we want this language to be in your application. We put the language in the application. If this administration has different language they want us to put in, wants us to take out language we put in before, we do that, and it's
we
never
are
that changes anything.
looking at our BIP premium application and just, pulling out information that we know may not be in line with what they would be asking for.
But we'll get if they go and re-advertise that grant opportunity, we would get their language.
Yeah.
They would say, this is how we're grading things now. We say, great, we will put an application that answers your grading questions.
So the only reason we're spending a little bit of time right now is sometimes those things come out and you have a very short time to turn it around. So we wanted to make sure we had at least some thought behind it. And then we'll be prepared a little quicker to turn things around, but ours it doesn't have a lot of stuff in it anyway. So I think we're pretty clean. So.
I think especially, in terms of the substantive issues, this is not a transit-oriented bridge or facilities. There's no transit-oriented.
it's car bridge.
It's correct.
And natural gas.
Can we keep any people in Australia across the river?
Right.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, confirmation and directives.
Just the workshop, getting the hour in. I think it was the biggest thing I had.
I think the other one that we need to get on the radar, and we talked a little bit about it, is for the BIP or whatever it's going to be called. We need to have a discussion on what amount do we want to go for.
Yeah.
And I personally think we ought to be doing that sooner than later, just in case this new BIP comes out with a short turnaround time.
Yeah.
And that's something I truly believe that the authority as a whole needs to really support, because it's a big decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
No single person can decide what we're putting in the application.
Yep.
So there's no application.
Catherine's got her hand up.
Oh, yeah, Catherine.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask the question just for my own clarification. The reason you're stating that is because we know every delay in construction year adds a certain percentage to the project, and we want to ensure we're staying ahead of any unforeseen increases to the price, thus decreasing the whole time because we've been thinking ahead. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Exactly. We don't want to be chasing the ball. We want to be bouncing the ball. Like that. You don't understand?
I don't. You've been striking out with me on the analogies today.
Here's the other way. Here's the projected cost and here's what we're asking for.
I got that. Yeah,
Okay.
that's not an analogy.
Okay, anything else, folks? If not, we'll adjourn the meeting and see you. The next meeting will be Monday, May the 12th, 2 to 4 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Thank you.